The hum of the sleek Airbus A350 was a distant echo as I adjusted my cashmere neck pillow. Next to me, Mark was already on his second gin and tonic, his hand resting possessively on my knee. "You have no idea how much I needed this, Andy," he said, his voice a low, intimate rumble. "Just you and me. Forgetting about the office for 2 whole weeks. Norway. The fjords. It's going to be epic." I smiled, leaning into him. "It's Andrea, honey. And it's not just you and me. Your sister's family will be there. Remember?" He waved a dismissive hand. "Details. They'll do their thing. We'll do ours. This trip is about us reconnecting." He took a sip of his drink. "God, after the stress of closing the Q4 reports, you deserve this more than anyone. My powerhouse. That was Mark. He could sell sunshine in the desert. For 5 years, I bought what he was selling." Andrea Carter, at 34, had built a thriving boutique marketing agency from the ground up. I was the engine, the strategist, the one who stayed up late poring over analytics. Mark was the charming frontman I'd married, great with clients, but, as I'd slowly come to realize, allergic to the actual grind of building something. He'd joined my company 2 years in, a partnership that felt more like I'd acquired a very handsome, very expensive dependent. The flight was smooth, the champagne was cold, and for a few hours, I let myself believe the fantasy. Maybe he was right. Maybe we needed this. Oslo's Gardermoen Airport was a blur of efficient Scandinavian design. We collected our luggage, an excessive amount of it, mostly belonging to Mark, and, I noted, several new, suspiciously high-end suitcases for his sister, Chloe. We found them waiting at the arrivals hall. "There they are!" Chloe squealed, rushing forward to envelop Mark in a dramatic hug. Her husband, David, gave me a weak smile and a nod. Their 2 kids, already hyped on sugar and excitement, buzzed around our legs. "Oh my God, the flight was endless," Chloe announced, linking her arm through Mark's. "But so worth it. I've been dreaming of this forever. The photos are going to be insane." That was Chloe, 30 years old, permanently perched on the edge of a meltdown or a celebration, with a lifestyle funded by a combination of David's middling architect salary and, I suspected, a generous gift allowance from her big brother, aka, from our joint account. "Let's get to the hotel," Mark said, taking charge. I booked a car. "Andrea, can you handle the driver?" He flashed me that winning smile. It was our unspoken rule. I handled things. The financial things. "Sure," I said, pulling out my phone to confirm the pre-booked luxury sedan. I caught the driver's eye, and he nodded, starting to load the mountain of bags. The Hotel Continental was everything the website promised. Opulent, historic, dripping with old-world charm. The lobby was a symphony of polished marble and discreet lighting. Mark strode confidently to the reception desk, with Chloe and her flock trailing behind him like ducklings. I hung back, sending a quick text to my COO to assure her everything was under control. I heard the polite, clipped English of the Norwegian receptionist. "A reservation for Carter, correct? For 5 adults, 2 children. That's us," Mark said, his voice booming with confidence. There was a clicking of keys. "Yes, Mr. Carter, I have your booking here. You have, let's see, 3 superior double rooms confirmed." The air shifted. It was subtle, but I felt it. I looked up from my phone. Mark let out a theatrical laugh. 3? No, there must be a mistake. We need 4. 1 for my sister and her husband, 1 for the kids, and 1 for my wife and myself. The receptionist, a young woman with a perfectly composed face, looked at her screen again. "I apologize, sir, but the booking is very clear. 3 rooms. It was made and prepaid 2 months ago." Chloe's head swiveled from the receptionist to Mark. 3? Mark, you said 4. You promised we wouldn't have to cram the kids into our room. David shuffled his feet. "Honey, I'm sure it's a simple error." Mark ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, a gesture I knew meant he was flustered. "This is ridiculous. Check again." Carter party. For rooms. I have checked. Sir, it is 3 rooms. Her tone was final. I stepped forward, my professional instincts kicking in. Let me see the confirmation email, I said, my voice calm. I was the problem solver. This was a glitch. Nothing more. Mark avoided my gaze, focusing intently on the receptionist. It must have been a system error when I booked it. Surely you have another room available? I am afraid we are fully booked. Sir, it is the peak season. That's when the first cold knot tightened in my stomach. Mark was a lot of things, but he was meticulous about his own comfort. He would never, ever book the wrong number of rooms for a 2-week vacation. Not for himself. Chloe's whine cut through the tension. Well, what are we going to do? We can't all fit in 3 rooms. The kids need their own space. It was then that Mark turned to me, and he didn't look confused or apologetic. He looked resigned, and then he crafted an expression of pained sympathy, directed solely at me. Andy, baby, I am so sorry, he said, his voice dripping with false contrition. This is a huge mess up. My fault entirely. It's Andrea, I said, my voice flat. What are you talking about? Your fault? He spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness. When I made the booking, I must have miscounted. I was so swamped at work. You know how it is. I guess I only booked 3. You guess? The chill in my stomach was spreading. Mark, we've been talking about this trip for 6 months. You confirmed the room assignments with me the week you booked it. You said, and I quote, all 4 are locked in, non-refundable, so we're committed. He had the decency to look uncomfortable for a split second before his mask slipped back into place. It was a mistake. Andrea, a stupid, honest mistake. Look, we'll figure it out. He turned to Chloe. The kids can have 1 room. You and David can have another. And he paused, as if the next part was a brilliant, yet difficult, solution. Andrea, you and I can take the 3rd. It's a double. It'll be cozy. Chloe's eyes widened in horror. And where do the kids put their things? Where do we all get ready? That's not going to work. Mark. An idea seemed to dawn on Mark. He looked at me, a patronizing pity in his eyes. Or, honey, I know it's not ideal, but maybe you could bunk with Chloe? Just for a few nights? Until we sort this out? Or, there's probably a perfectly nice motel or something nearby. We could look into that for you. The lobby, with its crystal chandeliers and hushed elegance, seemed to tilt on its axis. A motel? For me, I stared at him. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculation. The pieces, jagged and ugly, began to click into place. The insistence on handling the booking himself. The new suitcases. The way Chloe wasn't genuinely surprised, just performatively annoyed. You're suggesting, I said, my voice dangerously low, that on the vacation it paid for, I should go stay in a motel? Mark's face hardened. The sympathetic act vanished. Oh, don't start. Andrea, don't make this about money. You always do that. You always hold it over me. It was a simple error. And now you're trying to pick a fight and ruin everyone's trip before it's even started. Gaslighting. Classic Mark. Chloe jumped in, her voice a knife. Yeah, Andrea, it's not the end of the world. Don't be so dramatic. We're a family. We can make it work. Unless you're too good to share a room with me. I looked from Mark's defensive glare to Chloe's smug, triumphant face. David was studying the marble floor as if it held the secrets of the universe. The receptionist had taken a discreet step back, her professional demeanor unable to hide her second-hand embarrassment. My husband had booked a family vacation and intentionally left me without a room. The humiliation was a physical blow. Hot and sharp. You know what? Mark snapped, grabbing the 3 key cards from the desk and shoving one into my hand. It was for room 312. This is what we have. We're all tired from the flight. We're going upstairs to unpack and freshen up. You can come up and act like an adult, or you can stand down here and sulk. Your choice. He turned his back on me, handing a key to Chloe and one to David. Come on, guys, let's get the kids settled. Yay, The adventure begins, Chloe chirped, looping her arm through Mark's again. She didn't even glance back at me as they walked toward the elevators, their laughter echoing in the vast, silent lobby. David scurried after them, pulling the children's carry-ons. I stood there, alone, holding the single key card. It felt like a slap. The ornate clock above the reception desk ticked loudly. I was Andrea Carter, a woman who commanded boardrooms and seven-figure contracts, and I had just been effectively and deliberately evicted from my own life, the fight drained out of me, replaced by a cold, hollow certainty. This was no mistake. This was a message, and I had just finally received it. The key card felt like a shard of ice in my hand. I stood rooted to the spot, watching the elevator doors swallow my husband, his sister, and her family. Their laughter, bright and carefree, hung in the air for a moment longer. A cruel taunt, act like an adult or sulk. Mark's words echoed, each one a tiny hammer chipping away at the facade of a marriage I thought I had. My first instinct was pure, unadulterated rage, to storm upstairs, pound on the door of room 312, my room, supposedly, and unleash 5 years of pent-up frustration, to scream, to demand an explanation that made sense, to force him to look me in the eye and admit this was the cruel, premeditated act it so clearly was. But something held me back, a survival instinct, honed from years of negotiating with ruthless clients, kicked in. A public scene was exactly what Mark would want. It would allow him to play the victim, the patient husband dealing with his hysterical, unreasonable wife. See, he'd say to Chloe and David later, I told you she'd lose it. She can't handle not being in control. Control. That was the heart of it, wasn't it? This was a power move, a brutal, humiliating demotion from partner to unwanted guest. I turned away from the elevators and walked stiffly towards the hotel bar. It was a dark, wood-paneled sanctuary, nearly empty at this odd afternoon hour. I slid onto a plush bar stool, my back to the room, a double Macallan, neat. I told the bartender. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, too calm, too measured. As the amber liquid appeared before me, I pulled out my phone. My thumb hovered over Mark's name. I'd call him. I'd be calm. I'd ask him, one more time, to explain this logistical nightmare. But just as I was about to tap the screen, a new text message notification popped up. It was from my mother, Linda. The preview read, Andrea, don't make a scene. Don't go upstairs. Listen to me, carefully. A cold trickle of dread, entirely separate from the hotel lobby slight, ran down my spine. My mother wasn't a worrier. She was a former corporate lawyer who had raised me alone after my father died. A woman whose emotional range typically oscillated between dry wit and pragmatic silence. A message like this, out of the blue, was a 5-alarm fire. I opened the message fully. Mom, Andrea, don't make a scene. Don't go upstairs. Listen to me, carefully. Whatever excuse Mark just gave you is a lie. This is a setup. I need you to go somewhere quiet, right now, and check our joint banking app. Check the Amex, the savings, everything. I have a bad feeling, a very bad feeling. Call me as soon as you've looked. Don't confront him. Just go. The world narrowed to the glow of my phone screen. Our joint banking app, Mark and I had a joint account for household expenses. But the bulk of my assets, the profits from the agency, were in accounts in my name only. Though Mark was an authorized user on a high-limit Platinum Amex for business and family expenses, my mother, the only other person I trusted implicitly, had view-only access to my primary accounts, a safety net she'd insisted on years ago. You're a rich woman now, Andrea, she'd said, even if you love him. The numbers need a second set of eyes. That I'd humored her. Now, her paranoia looked like prophecy. My hands were trembling as I opened the banking app. I typed in my password, my heart hammering against my ribs. The main screen loaded, showing the checking account. The balance looked normal. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Maybe Mom was wrong. Maybe this was just a horrible, Coincidental mistake, and she was being overcautious. Then I clicked on the savings account. The balance was zero. I stared at the number. $0. 2 days ago, there had been over $85,000 in that account. It was our liquid cash fund for emergencies. For large purchases, gone. A series of transfers, each just under the daily wire limit, had drained it over the past 72 hours, all sent to an account number I didn't recognize. A wave of nausea hit me. I switched apps, pulling up the American Express portal. The recent charges loaded. There they were. Charges from a high-end luggage store in Soho. The new suitcases. First-class flight upgrades. Not just for him, but for Chloe's whole family. A receipt from a jeweler in Manhattan. A payment to a travel agency I'd never heard of for a Nordic adventure package. This was it. The vacation. All of it. Paid for with my money. And I was the only one without a room. The pieces didn't just click into place. They slammed together with the force of a tectonic shift. The booking error wasn't an error. It was the point. He hadn't forgotten to book my room. He had unbooked him from the entire trip. He brought me along just long enough to get me through airport security, to make it look legitimate, before stranding me in a foreign country. He and Chloe were probably upstairs right now, laughing, toasting their cleverness with minibar champagne, waiting for me to either slink away in shame or erupt in a fury they could use against me. The hurt and humiliation crystallized into something else. A cold, sharp, focused anger. I threw a 50-euro note on the bar, not waiting for my change, and walked out into the crisp Oslo air. I stood under the hotel's ornate awning, the chill seeping through my blazer, and called my mother. She picked up on the first ring. "Andrea, are you alone?" "I'm outside the hotel," I said, my voice eerily steady. "You were right. Tell me what you see." "The joint savings is zero. 85,000. Gone. Wire transfers to an unknown account. The Amex is littered with charges for this trip. First-class upgrades. Luggage. Everything." I heard her sharp intake of breath, but her voice was all business. "Okay, listen to me. This is what we're going to do. You're not going back inside that hotel. Do you understand me? You are not to speak to him. You are not to engage." "Mom, what is happening?" The steadiness in my voice cracked. "Why would he do this?" "Because he's a greedy, small-minded man who thinks he's won the lottery," she said, her tone razor-sharp. "I've had my suspicions for months. Andrea, the business dinners that ran too late. The new watch, he said, was a gift from a client. I did some digging. That account number the money was wired to? It's a new account, opened last month, under Chloe's name. The final piece. Of course, it was a family affair. He's been siphoning money for a while. I think," Mom continued, "but this is a withdrawal. He's cleaning you out. This trip is the victory lap. He's with his real family, spending your money, and he thought he'd left you with nothing but a scene so you'd look like the crazy one." The cold in my bones was replaced by a burning resolve. What do I do? First, you get to the airport. Right now. Use the app on your phone. Book a ticket on the next flight to JFK. Whatever it costs. Business class. First class. I don't care. Use your personal Amex. Not the joint card. He can't touch that one. I was already walking. Hailing a taxi. One slid to a stop in front of me. "Airport," I said to the driver, sliding into the back seat. "Good," Mom said, hearing the car door. "Now, listen. While you're on your way, I'm calling Martin Sterling." Martin Sterling was my attorney, a pit bull in an impeccably tailored suit. "You're going to email him from the car, giving him verbal authorization to act on your behalf. Tell him to freeze everything. The joint checking account. The savings, what's left of it. Cancel that Platinum Amex. Freeze your home equity line. Everything. I'll send him the details I have." I was already opening my email, my fingers flying across the screen. The message to Martin was short and to the point. "Martin, it's Andrea Carter. Mark is attempting to financially drain me. I am authorizing you and my mother, Linda Reed, to act on my behalf immediately. Freeze all joint assets and credit lines connected to Mark Carter. Effective immediately. I will call you from the air. I hit send, just like that, with a few taps on a screen in the back of a Norwegian taxi. I was cutting my husband off. It's done, I told my mother. Good girl, she said, and I could hear the fierce pride in her voice. Now, you come home. We have a war to plan. I ended the call and leaned my head against the cool glass of the taxi window. The picturesque streets of Oslo blurred past. There were no tears. The woman who had stood, humiliated in that hotel lobby, was gone. In her place was someone else. Someone harder. Someone dangerous. The vacation was over. The reckoning had begun. The taxi ride to Gardermoen Airport was a silent, 20-minute journey through a beautiful country I no longer saw. My phone, once a tool for managing my life and marriage, was now my command center. The humiliation and shock had burned away, leaving behind a core of glacial, calculating fury. First, the flight. I opened the booking app. The next direct flight to JFK was in 3 hours. A first-class seat cost a small fortune. I didn't flinch. I selected it, typed in my passport details, and paid with my personal American Express card. The one Mark's name was nowhere near. The confirmation email hit my inbox with a soft ping. A one-way ticket. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. Next, I opened my password manager. With cold, methodical precision, I began changing the passwords to everything. My primary email, my banking portals, the admin accounts for my company's server. I revoked Mark's access to the cloud storage where we kept household documents. Each new, complex password was a brick in a wall I was building between my old life and whatever was coming next. My phone buzzed. It was Mark. I watched his name flash on the screen, accompanied by a picture of us smiling on a beach in Napa. The memory felt like it belonged to someone else. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, a text popped up. Mark, where did you go? The kids are asking where Aunt Andrea is. This is ridiculous. Come back to the room so we can talk about this like adults. I almost laughed. The kids are asking. He was using children as pawns. Classic. I didn't respond. He was testing the waters, seeing how far he could push me before I either capitulated or exploded. He had no idea the game had already changed. I opened a new email to Martin Sterling, copying my mother. Subject, urgent. Formal authorization and instructions. Martin. Further to my earlier email. Please consider this formal written authorization to act on my behalf in all financial and legal matters pertaining to my marriage to Mark Carter. Effective immediately. 1. Please freeze the following joint accounts held at First Republic Bank. Checking XXXX 4587 and savings XXXX 1290. Mark Carter is to have zero access. 2. Cancel the American Express Platinum Card XXXX 9912, on which Mark Carter is an authorized user. 3. I also authorize you to place a freeze on our home equity line of credit with Wells Fargo, $150,000. 4. Please initiate the process of formally removing Mark Carter from any and all corporate titles and responsibilities at AC Consulting. Effective immediately. Have IT revoke all his system access. My COO, Sarah Jenkins, will assist with this. 5. Begin drafting divorce papers. Grounds, irreconcilable differences, and I will be providing evidence of constructive abandonment and financial malfeasance. I am currently en route to Oslo Airport and will be on flight DY701 to JFK. I will have my phone off for the majority of the flight, but will contact you upon landing at approximately 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is not a negotiation. These are my instructions. Best, Andrea Carter. The press of the send button was more final than any slammed door. I was launching missiles from a moving car, and there was no taking them back. The taxi pulled up at the departures terminal. I paid the driver, collected my single carry-on suitcase, the one Mark had always teased was too practical for a woman of my success, and walked into the bustling airport. The check-in kiosk for the airline was mercifully empty. I scanned my passport. and the machine spat out a first-class boarding pass. The paper felt like a winning lottery ticket to freedom. As I walked towards security, my phone buzzed again, and again. 2 more calls from Mark, followed by a string of escalating texts. Mark, Andrea, this isn't funny. Mark, are you really just going to leave? You're going to ruin this for everyone. Mark, Chloe is really upset. You're causing a scene. Mark, answer your phone. I stopped walking. I stood amidst the flow of travelers, my fingers typing out a reply. I kept it simple. I didn't justify. I didn't explain. I didn't accuse. I simply stated a new reality. Me, there was a problem with the booking. I've fixed it. I've gone home. Enjoy the vacation with your family. I hit send, then immediately opened my phone settings. I went to phone. Then blocked contacts. I found Mark's name. I hesitated for only a second, my thumb hovering over the option. Then I tapped it. A confirmation dialog box appeared. You will not receive phone calls, messages, or FaceTime from this contact. I selected block contact. The silence was instantaneous and profound. It was the most powerful action I had taken all day. Security was a swift, efficient blur. The first-class lounge was an oasis of calm. I found a quiet corner, ordered a glass of Sauvignon Blanc, and plugged in my phone. I had one more call to make. I dialed Sarah Jenkins, my COO and most trusted employee. Andrea, hey, how's Norway? Send pics. She answered, her voice cheerful. Sarah, I need you to listen carefully, and I need you to keep this completely confidential. I said, my voice low and even. The cheer vanished from her tone. Okay, what's wrong? I've just authorized my attorney, Martin Sterling, to contact you. Mark is no longer with the company. Effective immediately. You are to revoke all his keycard access, building access, and system passwords. Change the codes on the office doors. If he calls, direct him to Martin. If he shows up, do not let him in. Call security. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Whoa, Andrea, what happened? Are you okay? I will be, I said, and I realized I meant it. I can't go into details right now, but I need to know I can count on you. You can always count on me, Sarah said, her voice firm now. All business. Consider it done. I'll wait for Sterling's call. The office is secure. Thank you, Sarah. I felt a wave of gratitude for the solid, professional women in my life. I'll be in the air soon. I'll call you when I land. I ended the call just as the flight was called for boarding. First-class passengers were invited to pre-board. I finished my wine, stood up, and walked to the gate. As I handed my boarding pass to the attendant, I took one last look at my phone. There was a new email from Martin Sterling. Andrea, instructions received and understood. We are acting on all points immediately. We will freeze the assets before the banks close today. I've already left a message from Mr. Carter's cell phone informing him that all future communication regarding financial or legal matters must go through me. Travel safely. We'll be waiting for you. Best, Martin. I powered down my phone. As I walked down the jet bridge, a profound sense of calm settled over me. The battle lines were drawn. The first strikes had been launched. Silently and from a distance, Mark, Chloe, and David were probably still in that hotel room, oblivious, maybe even celebrating my temporary retreat. They thought they had won. They had no idea the war had just begun. I found my seat, a spacious pod by the window. I accepted a glass of champagne from the flight attendant, buckled my seatbelt, and closed my eyes as the plane began to taxi. I wasn't thinking about Mark, or the money, or the betrayal. I was thinking about my apartment in Manhattan. I was thinking about my office. I was thinking about my mother. I was going home, up in room 312. The room meant for Andrea and Mark. The mood was celebratory. Mark poured glasses of ridiculously expensive minibar champagne into water glasses, handing one to Chloe and David, to a successful first phase. Mark said, a smug grin plastered on his face. Chloe clinked her glass against his. I still can't believe she just stood there. I thought for sure she'd start screaming. The great Andrea Carter. Speechless. She took a sip. God, this is good. What is it? Who cares? It's on her dime. Mark laughed, draining his glass. She'll cool off. She'll go for a walk. Fume for a bit. And then she'll come crawling back, trying to resolve the issue like she always does. That's when we present her with the options. She can share with you, Chloe, or she can find her own place. Either way, we've established the new dynamic. David, ever the cautious one, swirled the champagne in his glass, looking uncomfortable. Are you sure about this, Mark? It feels extreme. What if she just leaves? And go where? David? Mark snapped, his good humor fading. Back to New York alone? How would that look? She's all about appearances. No, she'll fall in line. She always does. An hour passed, then another. There was no call from Andrea, no text. The initial bravado began to wear thin. Where is she? Chloe whined, stretched out on the king-size bed that was meant for Andrea. I'm starving. Let's go to that amazing seafood place I read about. She can find us when she's done with her little tantrum. Mark checked his phone again. Nothing. He'd sent several texts, each one more manipulative than the last. No response. A flicker of unease sparked in his gut, but he smothered it with arrogance. Fine, let's go. She'll be sorry she missed it. The restaurant was everything the reviews promised, elegant, with stunning views of the fjord. They ordered lavishly. Oysters. Lobster, the most expensive bottle of white wine on the menu. This is the life. Chloe sighed, snapping a picture of her plate for Instagram. Hashtag Norwegian Dream, hashtag family time. She captioned it, deliberately cropping out the empty fifth chair at the table. David, however, was growing increasingly anxious. Mark, seriously, try calling her again. She's probably just turned her phone off to be dramatic. Mark said, but he dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. See? Phone's off. She's sulking. The meal concluded. The bill arrived, presented on a sleek leather folder. Mark picked it up with a flourish, pulling out the sleek Titanium American Express Platinum card. He handed it to the waiter. Thank you. Excellent meal. The waiter nodded and disappeared. A moment later, he returned, his polite smile strained. I am sorry, sir. The card has been declined. A silence fell over the table. Declined? Mark laughed. A forced, nervous sound. That's impossible. Try it again. The waiter did. He came back with the same apologetic expression. I am sorry, sir. It is declined. Do you have another form of payment? Chloe's eyes were wide. What's going on? Mark? It's a mistake. Mark insisted, his face flushing. A security thing. They see a foreign transaction. He pulled out his wallet and produced another card. A Visa tied to their joint checking account. Use this. The waiter took it. He returned a minute later, his face, now, completely blank. Also declined. Sir. The blood drained from Mark's face. That's not possible. He fumbled for his phone. His hands shaking now. He opened the banking app. He typed in his password. An error message appeared. Invalid password. That he tried again. Same message. What is it? David asked, his voice low. I can't get in. Mark whispered. It was Chloe's turn to panic. She grabbed her own phone and opened the banking app she used for the household allowance Mark gave her. She knew the password. She'd snooped before. She typed it in. Account access suspended. Please contact your financial institution. Mark, she said, her voice trembling. My app, it says suspended. The waiter stood patiently. Sir, the bill. Right. Yes, Mark said, standing up. There must be a bank error. I'll call them. Let's just go back to the hotel and sort this out. The waiter's posture stiffened. I am afraid I cannot let you leave without settling the bill. Sir, the conversation that followed was a masterclass in humiliation. Mark, sputtering about his credit limit. The waiter, immovably polite but firm. The manager was called. Other diners were starting to stare. In the end, David, mortified, had to empty his personal wallet of all his Norwegian kroner and a small amount of euros he'd carried from home. just barely covering the exorbitant cost of the meal. They slunk out of the restaurant, the weight of 1,000 stairs on their backs. What the hell is happening? Mark? Chloe hissed as they hurried down the street. I don't know. A system outage or something. He blustered, but the fear was now a live wire in his chest. He knew. Somewhere deep down, he knew. They reached the Hotel Continental, the opulent lobby now feeling sinister. Mark strode to the front desk, trying to project an air of irritated inconvenience. There seems to be an issue with our credit cards, he told the night manager, a different, older man with a stern demeanor. A bank error. We'll sort it in the morning. We'd like to charge a few incidentals from the minibar to the room. If that's all right. The manager typed on his computer. His expression didn't change, but his eyes grew cold. I am sorry, Mr. Carter, but that will not be possible. And why not? Mark demanded, his voice rising. Because the credit card used to guarantee the room has been reported as stolen and cancelled. The pre-authorization has failed. Your reservation is no longer financially secured. You will need to provide a new, valid credit card for the entire stay, immediately, or you will need to vacate the rooms. The words landed like physical blows. Stolen and cancelled. Mark's phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, a desperate hope that it was Andrea, finally caving. It wasn't a call. It was an email notification. The sender was Martin Sterling. ESQ, the preview read, Dear Mr. Carter, please be advised that as of 4:15 p.m. Norwegian time, pursuant to the instructions of my client, Andrea Carter. Mark didn't need to read the rest. He looked up at the impatient face of the hotel manager, at Chloe's terrified expression, at David's look of utter defeat. Andrea hadn't gone for a walk to cool off. She had gone to war, and from 3,000 miles away, she had just evicted them, not just from a hotel, but from the life he had taken for granted. The polished marble floor beneath his feet no longer felt solid. It felt like a trapdoor had just swung open. The first-class cabin was a world of hushed efficiency, a stark contrast to the turmoil churning inside me. I didn't sleep. I sipped water, stared out the window at the endless dark of the Atlantic, and planned. The grief, the betrayal, that would come later. Right now, my mind was a spreadsheet, a legal pad, a battlefield map. The emotional part of me had been locked in a soundproof room. The CEO was now in charge. We landed at JFK with a gentle bump. The familiar sounds of New York. The gruff announcements. The hurried footsteps. It was a bomb. This was my territory. I powered on my phone. It exploded with notifications. Dozens of missed calls from Mark. A string of increasingly desperate texts, escalating from irritation to fury to outright panic. Then, silence. The emails from Martin Sterling started popping up. Each subject line a piece of the new architecture of my life. Assets frozen confirmation. Credit lines secured. Corporate separation initiated. I didn't read them yet. I hailed a cab, gave the driver my Upper East Side address, and finally opened the string of texts from Mark. Mark, 4:22 p.m. Oslo. Where did you go? The kids are asking where Aunt Andrea is. This is ridiculous. Come back to the room so we can talk about this like adults. Mark, 5:15 p.m. Oslo. Andrea. This isn't funny. Mark, 6:01 p.m. Oslo. Are you really just going to leave? You're going to ruin this for everyone. Mark, 6:45 p.m. Oslo. Answer your phone. Mark, 7:30 p.m. Oslo. After the restaurant. What did you do? The Amex was declined. What the hell is going on? Mark, 8:10 p.m. Oslo. After the hotel confrontation. They're kicking us out. The hotel says the card is stolen. Andrea, pick up the goddamn phone. Mark, 8:45 p.m. Oslo. Did I get an email from a lawyer? Martin Sterling? What is this? What have you done? Mark, 9:05 p.m. Oslo. Andrea. Please, we can fix this. Just call me. Please. The last one was a voicemail. I put the phone to my ear. His voice was ragged, stripped of all its charming bravado. Andy. Andrea. Jesus Christ. They took our luggage. They've locked us out. We're on the street. Chloe's hysterical. The kids are crying. What are we supposed to do? You've got to call the bank. Fix this. This has gone too far. Please. I'm sorry. Okay. Whatever I did. I'm sorry. Just make it stop. I deleted the voicemail. I felt nothing. No schadenfreude. No pity. Just a cold, clean emptiness. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done. He was sorry he'd been caught. He was sorry it hurt. The cab pulled up to my building. My doorman, Carlos, tipped his hat. Welcome back, Ms. Carter. That was a short trip. Unexpected business. Carlos, I said, managing a tight smile. It's good to be home. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it, immaculate, silent, and blessedly, powerfully mine. I dropped my bag by the door. Before I could even take off my coat, my intercom buzzed. Ms. Carter, a Mr. Sterling and a Mrs. Reed are here for you. Send them up. Please. Carlos. Minutes later, my mother swept in, pulling me into a fierce, wordless hug. Behind her was Martin Sterling, carrying a sleek leather briefcase. He looked exactly as he always did, like he'd just stepped out of a boardroom, his sharp eyes missing nothing. Andrea, he said, giving a curt nod. Good to see you in one piece. We settled in the living room. I poured us all glasses of water. No one wanted wine. This was business. Okay, I said, sitting opposite them. Tell me everything. Martin opened his briefcase. The financial lockdown is complete. The joint checking and savings are frozen. The Amex is canceled. The home equity line is frozen. I've also taken the liberty of freezing the title to his car, the Porsche, so he can't attempt to sell it. The bank has been notified of the fraudulent wire transfers from the savings account. They're launching an investigation. The account the money was sent to? I asked, as your mother suspected. It's in Chloe's name. Opened last month at a branch in Jersey City. Martin said, his lip curling in mild distaste. Amateur hour. The travel agency charges. The jewelry. The upgrades. All in the last 60 days. He got sloppy. Greedy. My mother shook her head. Her face a mask of cold fury. I knew it. I saw the statements last month. The charges were just excessive. More than usual. I tried to tell you. Andrea. You did, Mom. I said softly. I wasn't listening. I turned back to Martin. And the company? Sarah Jenkins has been fully briefed. As of 9 a.m. this morning, Mark Carter's key card and system access have been revoked. His name is being removed from the website and all corporate literature. I've drafted a concise internal memo stating he is pursuing other opportunities. Effective immediately. Sarah will handle any fallout. Good. The finality of it was staggering. In less than 24 hours, I had systematically erased my husband from my life. Now, the important part, Martin said, steepling his fingers. What do you want? Andrea, this is the time to be very clear. Do you want a fast divorce, with a settlement to just make him go away? Or do you want to press charges for the wire fraud? The evidence is overwhelming. We can have him arrested when he sets foot back in the country. I looked from Martin's analytical gaze to my mother's fiery one. I thought of Mark's voice on the phone, pleading. I thought of Chloe's smug face in the hotel lobby. I thought of the zero balance in my savings account. They hadn't just tried to leave me behind. They'd tried to leave me with nothing. The cold anger I'd felt in Oslo solidified into a diamond-hard resolve. I don't want a fast divorce, I said, my voice quiet but steady. And I don't just want to press charges. I leaned forward, looking Martin dead in the eye. I want to bury them. I want every single cent back. I want Chloe charged as an accomplice. I want to sue them for every dollar they spent on that trip. For emotional distress. For conspiracy. I want the Porsche. I want him to have nothing. I want the legal process to be so long, and so painful, and so expensive for them that they will wish they had never even thought my name. A slow, grim smile spread across Martin Sterling's face. It was the smile of a predator who had just been unleashed. Excellent, he said, pulling a fresh legal pad from his briefcase. In that case, let's talk strategy. Back in Oslo, the family vacation had descended into a special circle of hell. after being unceremoniously evicted from the Hotel Continental, their luggage held hostage until a bill they couldn't pay was settled. Mark, Chloe, David, and the two bewildered children found themselves huddled in the waiting area of the central train station. It was the only place open, warm, and free. Chloe was sobbing. Great, heaving sobs that drew stares from late-night commuters. I can't believe this. My beautiful trip. We're going to have to sleep here. With the vagrants. They're not vagrants. Chloe, they're just people waiting for trains, David said, his voice weary. He had his arm around his son, who was asleep on a hard plastic chair, using his father's jacket as a pillow. This is all your fault, Chloe shrieked, rounding on Mark. You said it was foolproof. You said she would just get a cheap hotel and we'd have a great time. You didn't say she'd nuke us from orbit. Shut up, Chloe. Just shut up and let me think. Mark snapped, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. His phone was clutched in his hand. His lifeline. He had tried calling Andrea again and again, straight to voicemail. Every time, the final, chilling sound of that automated message was driving him insane. He had only one option left. He needed to call his parents. The humiliation was acid in his throat. He was the successful son, the one who'd married the rich wife. To admit this, it was unthinkable, but they were his only hope. He found a relatively quiet corner and dialed his father's number. It was late afternoon in New Jersey. Mark? Hey, son, how's Norway? His father, Gary, boomed. Dad. Mark's voice cracked. Dad, I need help. The whole story came tumbling out in a rushed, panicked jumble. The misunderstanding with the rooms, Andrea's overreaction, her disappearance, the declined cards, the lawyer's email. He painted himself as the victim. Of course, a man blindsided by his hysterical, vengeful wife. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. Mark, Gary said, his voice now flat and serious. Your mother, and I got an email too, from Martin Sterling. Mark's blood ran cold. What? Why? He informed us that any financial assistance provided to you, Chloe, or David for the purposes of extending your stay in Norway or returning to the United States could be construed as knowingly aiding in the dissipation of marital assets and that we could be held financially liable. He was very thorough. Mark felt the world drop out from under him. Andrea had thought of everything. She had cut off every escape route. Dad, you have to believe me. She's lost her mind, Mark pleaded, desperation clawing at him. We're stranded. They have our luggage. The kids are exhausted. I spoke to Bob Miller, Gary said, referring to a family friend who was a lawyer. He said this Sterling is a barracuda, top of his field. He said if what's in that email is even half true, you're in a world of trouble. Son, Bob's advice was simple. Do not, under any circumstances, give them a dime. But, I'm sorry, Mark, Gary said, and he genuinely sounded it, but there was a firmness there, an instinct for self-preservation that overrode paternal loyalty. We can't risk it. You're on your own. You need to figure this out, and you need to call that lawyer back and try to make a deal. The line went dead. Mark stood frozen, the phone still pressed to his ear. The last of his hope evaporated. He was truly, utterly alone. He stumbled back to the miserable group. Chloe looked up, her face streaked with mascara. Well, what did they say? When is the money coming? Mark just shook his head, unable to speak. Chloe's face crumpled. No, they have to help us. They're our parents. She started crying again, even louder. The sound grated on Mark's last nerve. All the fear and panic curdled into a white-hot rage. It wasn't his fault. It was hers, Andrea's, the cold, calculating bitch. He started punching her number into his phone again, his thumb jabbing at the screen. Voicemail. Again. This time, he didn't hang up. When the beep sounded, he unleashed a torrent of fury. You think you're so clever. You frigid bitch. He snarled into the phone, not caring who heard him. Stranding us here. Do you have any idea what you've done? Chloe is a mess. The kids are terrified. Is this what you wanted? To prove how powerful you are? Well, congratulations. You've destroyed our family. I hope you're happy. You miserable. The voicemail cut him off. He screamed in frustration and threw his phone against the wall. It bounced off with a crack, the screen splintering. David flinched. Mark. For God's sake. Shut up. David. Mark roared. This is all your fault too. If you had any backbone, any at all, we wouldn't be in this situation. He slumped onto the floor, his head in his hands. The rage had burned out as quickly as it had ignited, leaving only ashes and despair. He picked up his damaged phone. Miraculously, it still worked. The cracked screen showed the time. 2:00 a.m. He had one last, pathetic idea. He opened his email and typed a new message to Andrea. He didn't bother with a subject line. Andrea, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I was stupid and greedy, and I let Chloe talk me into this. It was a terrible mistake. Please make it stop. We have nowhere to go. The kids are crying. I'm crying. I'll do anything. I'll sign anything. Just please, can you at least pay for a flight home? Please don't leave us here. I love you. I know you don't believe me, but I do. Mark. He hit send. Then he sat on the cold, dirty floor of the Oslo train station, surrounded by the ruins of his own making, and waited for a reply that he knew, in the deepest, most broken part of himself, would never come. The email from Mark sat in my inbox like a dead thing. I read it once, my eyes scanning the pathetic pleas and the desperate attempt to shift blame onto Chloe. I let Chloe talk me into this, typical, even in abject surrender. He couldn't muster a full, honest confession. There was no apology for the years of subtle manipulation, for the quiet contempt, for the fundamental betrayal of our marriage vows. This was just an apology for getting caught. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Martin Sterling with a single-line instruction. Add this to the file re his character and willingness to deflect responsibility. My mother, who had stayed over in the guest room, found me in the kitchen the next morning, already dressed in a sharp, tailored pantsuit, grinding coffee beans. You're going to the office? She asked, her eyebrows raised in surprise. The world didn't stop spinning because my husband is a thief. Mom, I said, my voice even. I have a company to lead. Clients who depend on me. Sitting here wallowing won't get my $85,000 back. She studied me for a long moment, a mixture of pride and concern in her eyes. You don't have to be this strong all the time. Andrea, it's okay to fall apart. I'll fall apart later, I said, pouring the hot water over the grounds. Right now, I have work to do, and I did. The office was my sanctuary, the familiar hum of computers, the purposeful energy of my team, the floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over a city that demanded resilience. It was the perfect antidote to the pathetic drama unfolding in Norway. Sarah had handled the transition flawlessly. Mark's name was already gone from the door. His empty desk had been cleared out, the contents boxed up and sent to storage. How are you holding up? Sarah asked, stepping into my office and closing the door. I'm operating, I said, looking up from my computer. It's the only thing that makes sense right now. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. He was always a parasite, she said bluntly, a sentiment she'd wisely kept to herself for years. The team is relieved. To be honest, everyone's sending you their best. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called a few close friends, not to spill the sordid details, but to simply say, Mark and I are separating. It's ugly. I might be quiet for a bit, but I value your friendship. The outpouring of support was immediate and fierce. They weren't surprised. The consensus was clear. They never trusted him. They were just waiting for me to see it. Their validation was a shield, strengthening my resolve. Meanwhile, in Oslo, Mark's pathetic email to me had been a last, failed gambit. With no money and no help from his parents, he was forced to do the unthinkable. Contact the U.S. Embassy. The scene at the embassy was a fresh layer of humiliation. They were seen not as distressed American citizens, but as irresponsible tourists who had mismanaged their funds. After hours of waiting and explaining, a weary embassy official laid out their only option. "We cannot give you money," the official said, his tone bored. "We can, however, facilitate a repatriation loan. It's essentially a high-interest loan from the U.S. government to cover the cost of the most direct, economical flight back to the United States. You will be required to sign a promissory note, and the debt will be pursued aggressively if not repaid." "Economical?" Chloe whispered, horrified. "We're not flying coach." The official didn't even bother to look at her. "It's that, ma'am. Or you can seek assistance from local charities. The choice is yours." Defeated, Mark signed the papers. The loan covered 6 seats in the very last row of a budget airline flight to Newark, with a layover in Reykjavik that lasted 7 hours. There would be no first-class lounge, no complimentary meals, no legroom. The journey was a nightmare. The children, exhausted and confused, cried for most of the flight. Chloe alternated between silent, seething resentment and loud, weepy complaints. David retreated into a shell of shame, barely speaking. Mark sat by the window, staring out at the clouds, the cracked screen of his phone a constant reminder of his shattered life. He was going home, but to what? No wife, no money, no job, and a mountain of debt. The flight landed at Newark Liberty Airport. The slow, painful walk through customs and immigration felt like a perp walk. They had no goods to declare, no souvenirs, just the clothes on their backs and the stench of failure. As they emerged into the arrivals hall, blinking in the fluorescent light, they saw them, a man and a woman, holding a simple sign, not a name, just 2 words, "Process server." The man stepped forward. "Mark Carter? Chloe Carter? David Evans?" he said, his voice impersonal. "Who are you?" Mark asked, his voice hoarse. The man didn't answer. Instead, he handed a thick envelope to Mark, another to Chloe, and a third to a bewildered David. "You've been served. Have a good day." He and his partner turned and walked away, melting into the crowd. Mark tore open the envelope. The heading on the first page made his knees go weak. Summons and complaint for divorce. Beneath it was another document. Civil complaint, fraud, conversion, and conspiracy. Chloe was already shrieking, her screams echoing through the terminal. "What is this? What does it mean?" It meant the battle was over. The war had just officially begun. Andrea hadn't just frozen them out. She had welcomed them home with a lawsuit designed to annihilate them. The days after serving the papers were a study in controlled chaos, orchestrated from the serene epicenter of my office. Martin Sterling was a machine. The lawsuits were just the opening salvo. He had also filed a motion for exclusive use of the marital home, which was solely in my name, purchased before the marriage, and a temporary restraining order preventing Mark from coming within 500 feet of me, my residence, or my place of business. The grounds were harassing and threatening voicemails, citing the one he left from the Oslo train station. The judge granted it without hesitation. I was back in my apartment, the legal fortress secure, when the call came from Carlos, the doorman. His voice was tense. "Ms. Carter, Mr. Carter is here. He's demanding to be let up. He's in quite a state." I felt a cold calm settle over me. I had known this was coming. The served papers would have been the final straw, breaking through his despair and igniting the fury of a cornered animal. "It's okay, Carlos. Don't let him up. I'll handle it." I walked to the intercom panel by my front door. I didn't pick up the handset. I simply pressed the talk button. My voice amplified into the building's elegant lobby. "Mark." There was a moment of stunned silence from below. He hadn't expected me to answer. Then, his voice erupted, tinny and distorted through the speaker, but crackling with rage. "Andrea, you bitch. You had me served? At the airport? What the hell is wrong with you? Your language." "Mark," I said, my voice flat. "There are children in this building. Don't you dare talk to me about children. After what you did to us, to those kids, you stranded us. You left us to rot in Norway. I left you on a vacation you planned and paid for with my money." I corrected him. The consequences of your actions are your own to manage. My actions? He screamed. I made a mistake. A stupid mistake with a hotel booking. And you nuke our entire lives? You take my job? You freeze me out of my own home? It hasn't been your home for a long time. Mark, and AC Consulting was never your job. It was a charity I ran for you. The charity is now closed. I heard him take a ragged breath. When he spoke again, he tried to shift tactics, his voice dropping into the low, wounded tone he used when he was trying to manipulate me. Andy, baby, please. Just let me up. Let's talk. We can fix this. I love you. This is all a huge misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I said, my voice dripping with contempt, was yours. You misunderstood my generosity for weakness. You misunderstood my love for blindness. That misunderstanding is now over. The mask of contrition shattered. You think you can just destroy me? He roared. You think you can get away with this? I'll fight you. Andrea, I'll take you for every penny you have. I'll tell everyone what a cold, heartless monster you are. I'll go to the press. I'll ruin your precious reputation. This was the real Mark, the one I had glimpsed in shadows over the years, now fully exposed. Go ahead, I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips. Tell them everything. Mark, tell them how you booked a vacation for your mistress. Mistress? What are you? Because that's what Chloe was. Wasn't she? I continued, my voice cutting like ice. Your emotional mistress. Your partner in crime. You were married to her long before you married me. Tell the press how you and she conspired to drain my bank accounts. Tell them how you planned to strand me in a foreign country. Please, I'm sure the story will generate a great deal of sympathy for you. Martin has already drafted a defamation suit, ready to file the moment you speak to a reporter. It will be the fastest lawsuit you've ever lost. He was sputtering, incoherent with rage. You can't. I'm your husband. You were, I said, the finality in my voice absolute. You are now the opposing party in a lawsuit. All future communication will go through Martin Sterling. I'm not going anywhere. He yelled. I'll stay here all night. I'll tell everyone who comes in what a witch you are. Carlos, I said, my voice calm. Is the gentleman creating a disturbance? Carlos's voice came through, clear and professional. He is. Ms. Carter, please inform him that if he does not leave the premises immediately, you are authorized to call the police. He is subject to a restraining order. His presence here is a criminal act. I could hear Carlos relaying the message. Mark's response was a guttural scream of pure frustration, followed by the sound of a potted plant being knocked over and shattering on the marble floor. You'll regret this. Andrea, I swear to God, you'll regret this. Mark screamed. Then, I heard Carlos's voice, firm. Sir, I have called the police. They are on their way. There was a string of expletives, the sound of scuffling feet, and then the heavy front door of the building slamming shut. Silence. I released the talk button and leaned my forehead against the cool wall. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from power. I had stood my ground. I had faced the monster and watched him crumble. My phone buzzed. A text from Martin Sterling. My contact at the precinct confirms a 911 call from your building for a disorderly male. They'll pick him up if he's still on the block. You did well. Do not engage again. I texted back. I won't need to. He has nothing left. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. A few moments later, I saw him emerge. A small, frantic figure. He looked up at my building, his face a pale mask of hatred. Then, he turned and scurried down the street, disappearing around the corner, just as the flashing blue lights of a police car turned onto the avenue. He was gone, not just from my lobby, but from my life. The confrontation was over. The cleanup had just begun. The confrontation at my building had been a necessary, cathartic purge. It had drawn a line in the sand, and Mark had clearly understood that crossing it would mean immediate arrest. The harassing calls and texts stopped. The silence from his end was deafening, but for me, it was peaceful. It gave me space to breathe, to think, and most importantly, to dig. I sat in Martin Sterling's imposing corner office. The Manhattan skyline spread out behind him like a promise of cold, hard justice. My mother, Linda, was beside me, a silent pillar of strength. Martin steepled his fingers, a grim expression on his face. The discovery process is underway. He began, tapping a thick folder on his desk. We've received the first round of documents from Mark's counsel. It's enlightening. Enlightening how? I asked, my stomach tightening. The booking error was indeed intentional. Martin said, his voice devoid of any surprise. We have emails between Mark and Chloe, sent weeks before the trip. He slid a printed email across the polished mahogany desk. I picked it up. The words seemed to burn my fingers. From Mark Carter to Chloe Carter. Subject, Oslo final details. Chloe confirmed. All set. I've modified the booking. Down to 3 rooms. Told the travel agent it was a change in plans. 1 less person. She'll find out when we get there. Don't worry. I've got a plan. She'll either have to share with you, which will be hell for her. She'll hate it, or she'll have to get her own place, which will make her look like the difficult one. Either way, we win. The account is primed. The last transfer goes through tomorrow. Get ready for the trip of a lifetime. On Andrea, can't wait to see your face when you see the jewelry I got you. You deserve it for putting up with Mom and Dad all these years. I felt the blood drain from my face. The cold, premeditated cruelty of it was worse than I had imagined. It wasn't a mistake, it was a strategy. My mother put a steadying hand on my arm. There's more, Martin said, his tone carefully neutral. The jewelry he refers to. We subpoenaed the jeweler's records. He slid another sheet of paper toward me. It was a receipt for a diamond tennis bracelet. The price was staggering. The description included an engraving on the clasp. To my CC forever, MC. CC Chloe Carter. My skin crawled. He bought his sister a forever bracelet with my money. I said, my voice a hollow whisper. The implication hung in the air. Ugly and unspeakable. It gets worse, Martin said, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine discomfort in his eyes. The wire transfers to Chloe's account, they didn't start 2 months ago. Andrea. I looked up. What? We did a forensic audit. Going back 5 years. Small, regular transfers. A few hundred here, 1,000 there. Always just under thresholds that would trigger alerts. It started about 6 months after you made him a vice president at the firm. It looks like a retainer. The room seemed to tilt. 5 years. He had been stealing from me and funneling money to his sister. For 5 years. Almost our entire marriage. What for? My mother asked, her voice like steel. What was he paying for? That's the question, isn't it? Martin said. He opened another folder. This is where I need to bring in a specialist. Someone who can connect dots we can't. I've taken the liberty of retaining someone. She's discreet, thorough, and expensive. Her name is Eleanor Vance. A private investigator? I asked. The best, Martin affirmed. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Eleanor, please come in. The door opened and a woman walked in. She was in her late 40s, with a calm, unassuming presence and sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. She didn't look like a movie PI. She looked like a savvy accountant or a tenacious librarian. Andrea, Linda, this is Eleanor Vance, Martin said. Eleanor nodded a greeting and got straight to business. Mr. Sterling has briefed me. My job is to find the why behind the numbers. Why the payments? What was the nature of the relationship that required such sustained financial support? She looked directly at me. Mrs. Carter, I need to ask you some uncomfortable questions about your marriage, about Chloe. I took a deep breath. Ask, was their relationship unusually close? She began, her tone professional and non-judgmental. I thought back. The constant phone calls Mark would take from her, even in the middle of our dinners. The way he'd drop everything if she had a crisis, which was usually something trivial like a fight with a friend or a bad haircut. The vacations they took together before I came along. the inside jokes, the physical affection that sometimes felt possessive. I always thought it was just a codependent sibling relationship. I said slowly, Chloe is the baby. She was always spoiled. Mark was her protector. I thought it was annoying, but I never thought. I trailed off, unable to voice the grotesque suspicion taking root in my mind. We'll start with the financial forensics, Eleanor said, not pushing further. But I also need to look into Mark's activities outside the marriage, the business dinners, the late nights. To be blunt, infidelity, whether emotional or physical, is often a key motivator in financial crimes like this. A week later, Eleanor came to my apartment. Her expression was grim. I've found something, she said, opening her laptop. It's not what you think, but in some ways, it's worse. My mouth went dry. Show me. The financial trail led to a shell company, which in turn led to a series of payments to a man named Frankie Walsh. She turned the screen toward me. It was a DMV photo of a man in his 50s, with a hardened face and cold eyes. Who is he? A small-time private investigator based in Queens, Eleanor said. Specializes in marital disputes, workers' comp fraud, that sort of thing. Not exactly top tier. Mark hired a PI? On me? A fresh wave of betrayal washed over me. No, Eleanor said, her gaze steady. That's the thing. Chloe hired him. The payments from Mark to Chloe correlate almost exactly with payments from Chloe to Frankie Walsh. I stared at her, confused. She was having her husband followed? No, Eleanor repeated softly. She was having you followed. Andrea, the air left my lungs. What? For years. Frankie Walsh has a file on you. Your daily routines, your meetings with clients, your lunches with friends, your appointments with your gynecologist. Everything. I felt violated to my very core. Why? Why would she do that? Control. Eleanor said simply. Information is power. She knew your schedule better than you did. She knew when you'd be home, when you'd be away. It's how they planned the Oslo trip, so precisely. It's how they knew when to move money. They were watching you, Andrea, for a very, very long time. She let that sink in for a moment before continuing. And there's one more thing. I tracked down an old friend of Mark's from college. After a few drinks, he became quite chatty. He said that back in the day, Mark and Chloe were inseparable in a way that made people talk. There was an incident at a fraternity party. A guy made a pass at Chloe, and Mark nearly put him in the hospital. The friend said Mark always had a possessive thing about his sister. He said, and I quote, it was like he thought he was her husband, not her brother. The pieces of the horrifying puzzle slammed together. The financial support wasn't just for a spoiled sister. It was a payoff. It was the price of a twisted, obsessive loyalty that excluded everyone else, especially me. I had never been his partner. I had been the outsider, the bankroll, the obstacle to their sick, codependent union. The betrayal was no longer just about money. It was a profound, psychological violation. I stood up and walked to the window, feeling nauseous. Are you okay? Eleanor asked. I turned around, my face set in a mask of cold fury. I will be, I said, my voice trembling not with sadness, but with rage. Now I know what I'm really fighting, and I'm not stopping until they have nothing left. Not a dollar, and not each other. The discovery of Chloe's surveillance operation shifted the entire landscape of the legal battle. It wasn't just about greed anymore. It was about a calculated, long-term campaign of intrusion and manipulation. Martin Sterling was practically gleeful. This is golden, he'd said, rubbing his hands together. Conspiracy, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. We can add stalking charges. This moves the case from civil court into a much darker, more compelling territory for a jury. The first step was to tighten the noose. While Mark was the primary target of the divorce and fraud suits, Chloe was now squarely in the crosshairs. We filed a separate civil suit against her. Conversion, conspiracy, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The complaint detailed the wire transfers, the planning of the Oslo trip, and Most damningly, The Years of Surveillance by Frankie Walsh, funded by money Mark had stolen from me. The goal was twofold: recover every cent she had ever received, and shatter the toxic alliance at the heart of this betrayal. The process server found Chloe at her modest suburban home in New Jersey. David answered the door, his face pale and weary. When he saw the envelope, he just sighed and called for his wife. Chloe's shrieks could be heard from the street. "What is this? I'm not accepting that. Get off my property." But she was served. The legal machinery was now grinding directly against her. A few days later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A moment later, a text came through from the same number. "Unknown. Andrea, it's Chloe. Please, we need to talk." I showed the text to my mother and Martin, who were at my apartment for a strategy session. "Don't respond," Martin said immediately. "Anything she says will be an attempt to manipulate you or gather information. She's panicking. The lawsuit against her personally exposes her and David to financial ruin. Their house isn't worth much, but we can put a lien on it. David's salary can be garnished." She's realizing this isn't a game. But Chloe was nothing if not persistent. The calls continued. The texts became more pleading. "Chloe, Andrea, please. I know you hate me, but Mark made me do it. He pressured me. Chloe, those payments were for my kids, for their college fund. You wouldn't understand. You're not a mother. Chloe, David is going to leave me if this doesn't stop. You're destroying my family." The audacity was breathtaking. She was trying to paint herself as the victim. I didn't respond. I just forwarded each message to Martin, adding to the mountain of evidence of her harassment. The breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening. My intercom buzzed. It was Carlos. "Ms. Carter, there's a Mr. David Evans here to see you. He says it's urgent, and he's alone." "David?" That was a surprise. I hesitated, then told Carlos to send him up. I wasn't afraid of David. He was a weak man, not a violent one. He looked like a ghost of himself when I opened the door. He was soaked from the rain. His shoulders slumped. "Andrea," he said, his voice ragged. "I'm sorry to just show up. She doesn't know I'm here." I let him in, but didn't offer him a seat. "What do you want?" "David, it's about the PI." He blurted out, unable to meet my eyes. "Frankie Walsh. Chloe didn't just have you followed to help Mark with the money." I crossed my arms, waiting. David swallowed hard, looking at the floor. "She was obsessed with you, with your life. She had boxes of photos, of you and your friends at lunch, of you and your mom. She'd make comments, horrible comments. She'd look at the pictures of your house, your vacations, and she'd just seethe with jealousy. She thought you'd stolen her brother from her. The trips, the money, it was like she felt entitled to it. To your life. The Oslo thing, it was her idea. The room thing, she told Mark it would be funny to see the great Andrea Carter put in her place." He finally looked up at me, and his eyes were full of a desperate, miserable truth. "I knew about the money, Andrea. Not all of it, but some. I was too much of a coward to say anything. I thought if I just kept my head down, it would be okay. But this, the lawsuit, you're right to do it. You're right, but I'm begging you. Don't take my house. Don't take my salary. My kids, they didn't do anything. I'll testify. I'll tell the court everything I know about the money, about the trip, about her fixation on you. Just please, don't destroy us completely." I studied him. He was pathetic, but he was also the first person from their side to show a shred of decency. He was offering me a weapon, and he was doing it to save his own skin. But it was a powerful weapon nonetheless. "I'll have my lawyer draw up an agreement," I said coldly. "You'll give a full, sworn deposition. You'll provide any documents you have. In return, I will drop the suit against you personally, but I am not dropping it against Chloe. And if you perjure yourself or hold anything back, I will not only reinstate the suit against you, I will pursue you with everything I have. Do you understand?" He nodded, a look of profound relief mixed with shame on his face. "Yes, I understand. Thank you, Andrea." "Don't thank me," I said, opening the door for him to leave. Just get out. The next day, Chloe's number appeared on my phone again. This time, I answered. I said nothing. Andrea, are you there? Her voice was shrill, panicked. I'm here. David was here last night. He was different. He won't talk to me. What did you do? What did you say to him? I didn't do anything. Chloe, I said, my voice calm. But David seems to have finally found his conscience. You bitch, she screamed. You're turning my husband against me. You've taken my brother. And now you're taking my husband. You did that to yourself. Chloe, I said, you and Mark. You built a house of cards on my money. And you're shocked that it's falling down. You were so busy watching my life. You forgot to live your own. There was a strangled sob on the other end of the line. You can't prove anything about that PI. It's his word against mine. We have the financial records, I said, and we have David now. He's ready to testify about your little obsession. How does that look, Chloe? A woman so jealous of her brother's wife that she spends years having her followed? A jury will eat that up. The line was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, all the fight was gone from her voice. It was just a broken whisper. What do you want? Just, what do you want from me? I want the diamond bracelet. For starters, I said, the one he bought you with my money. The one engraved forever. I want you to courier it to my lawyer's office by tomorrow. Then, I want you to sign the confession Martin Sterling will send you. You will admit to your role in the wire transfers and the conspiracy. If you do that, I might be persuaded to settle for the return of the stolen funds, plus punitive damages, without pushing for jail time. Jail time? She gasped. Conspiracy and fraud are felonies. Chloe, I said, driving the point home. You're not just losing the money you stole. You're looking at losing your freedom. I heard her break down into hysterical sobs. I didn't wait for a response. I ended the call. An hour later, Martin called. Courier just dropped off a package. It's the bracelet. I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The first domino had fallen. Chloe, the jealous, manipulative sister, had broken. Her alliance with Mark was fractured. She would turn on him to save herself. It was only a matter of time. The reckoning was no longer just a legal concept. It was happening, one shattered life at a time. And David's betrayal was the hammer that had finally broken his wife. The diamond bracelet, now resting in an evidence bag on Martin Sterling's desk, was more than just reclaimed property. It was a trophy, a symbol of a broken alliance. Chloe's capitulation, driven by David's defection and the cold reality of prison time, had fundamentally altered the battlefield. Mark was now isolated. 2 days after Chloe couriered the bracelet, Martin received a call from Mark's new attorney, a man named Robert Hill. Hill had a reputation for being a bulldog in contentious divorces. But even bulldogs recognize a lost cause when they see one. He wants to talk settlement. Martin told me over the speakerphone in his office, a note of dry amusement in his voice. Hill is floating the possibility of Mark waiving all claims to spousal support and accepting a modest, lump sum payment in exchange for a quick, quiet divorce and the dropping of the civil fraud charges. My mother, who was with me, snorted. Modest? After he stole 85 grand and tried to destroy her? It's a starting point, Martin said. More importantly, it's a sign of profound weakness. Hill knows the criminal fraud case, especially with Chloe now poised to testify for the prosecution, is a potential disaster. A felony conviction would follow Mark forever. Their goal now is containment. What do you recommend? I asked, though I already knew my own answer. We listen, Martin said, a strategic glint in his eye. We engage. We draw them in. The more they talk, the more they might reveal, or the more desperate they'll become. The key is to make them believe a clean. Financial settlement is within reach. It makes them pliable. It might also make Mark careless. A series of carefully choreographed communications ensued between the two law firms. Robert Hill, on behalf of Mark, formally proposed a settlement conference. We agreed. The conference was held in one of the neutral, soulless mediation rooms in the courthouse annex. Mark and I did not look at each other. He was dressed in a suit that looked a size too big, as if he'd lost weight rapidly. The charming facade was utterly gone, replaced by a sullen, exhausted tension. Robert Hill, a broad-shouldered man with a perpetual frown, sat beside him. On our side, it was Martin, myself, and a silent associate taking notes. Hill opened. My client wishes to express his deep regret for the pain and misunderstanding that has occurred. He is eager to put this difficult chapter behind both of you and move forward. To that end, he is willing to forego any claim to spousal support and to the marital residence in exchange for a full release of all claims, civil and criminal. He would accept a one-time payment of $250,000. I didn't react. The number was an insult. It was roughly what he'd stolen, plus a little extra for his trouble. Martin didn't blink. Your client's regret is noted, though the evidence of premeditated fraud rather undercuts the notion of a misunderstanding. Martin said, his tone conversational. As for the offer, it is, frankly, not serious. Mrs. Carter is not paying Mr. Carter $250,000 for the privilege of not prosecuting him for stealing from her. The current settlement on the table is the return of all converted assets, plus punitive damages to be determined, and a divorce with Mr. Carter receiving nothing. That is the starting point. Mark's jaw tightened. I built that company too. He muttered, not looking up. Your name was on the door. Mark, I said, speaking for the first time. My voice was calm, clear, and it made him flinch. You didn't build anything. You occupied a chair I paid for. Hill held up a placating hand. Let's keep this productive. My client is in a difficult financial position. The loss of his employment, the legal fees, a punitive judgment will leave him destitute. Is that truly your goal? Andrea, after all you shared? Martin answered for me. Our goal is justice and restitution. The destitution, as you call it, is a direct consequence of your client's own choices. However, he said, leaning forward slightly, a masterful performance of reluctant consideration. My client is not devoid of compassion, nor is she interested in a protracted legal circus that serves no one but the lawyers. He let that hang in the air. Mark looked up, a flicker of desperate hope in his eyes. We might be persuaded. Martin continued slowly to consider a true clean break, one that involves a final number, a full release, and no criminal referrals. But the number would have to reflect the true scale of the damage, not just the stolen funds, but the breach of trust, the legal costs, the profound personal violation. What number? Hill asked, his voice cautious. Martin named a figure. It was high enough to be painful, but not so astronomically high that it would be immediately dismissed as fantasy. It was a number designed to make Mark think, if I can just get this money, I can start over. I can get away from her. That's outrageous. Mark hissed. It's negotiable, Martin said with a shrug. But the prerequisite for any negotiation is a full, sworn financial disclosure from your client. Every account, every asset, going back 5 years. We need to see what we're actually dealing with before we can talk about a global settlement. Full transparency. That's the price of admission. This was the trap. Under the pressure of a potential deal, Mark might be tempted to lie or conceal assets on the sworn disclosure. Perjury in a divorce proceeding was a serious matter, and it would give us even greater leverage. Alternatively, the process of preparing it would force him to confront the barren reality of his financial life without me, deepening his despair. Hill knew it was a standard, if aggressive, request he couldn't refuse without looking like he was hiding something. We'll provide a disclosure, he said tightly. Good, Martin said, gathering his papers. We'll await it. And, Robert, a word of unsolicited advice. Encourage your client to be meticulously, painfully honest. The consequences of omission at this stage would be severe. The meeting adjourned. As we walked out, my mother, who had been waiting outside, fell into step with us. Well, he took the bait, Martin said, a small, cold smile on his lips. He's desperate for a way out that doesn't involve orange jumpsuits. He'll spend the next week scrambling to make his finances look both pitiful enough to garner sympathy, but not so pitiful that our number seems insane. In that scramble, he'll make a mistake. A week later, Mark's financial affidavit arrived. It was a masterpiece of pathetic obfuscation. It listed his income as zero. His assets consisted of a half share in a 10-year-old Honda Civic, David's car. As it turned out, some negligible retirement funds, and the clothes on his back. His liabilities, however, were detailed with gusto. The repatriation loan from the U.S. government, his legal fees, credit card debt. Notably, there was no mention of any joint accounts with Chloe, nor any reference to the seed money he'd been funneling to her for years. Martin had Eleanor Vance and his forensic accountant go over it with a fine-tooth comb. They cross-referenced it with the banking data we already had. He's perjured himself, Martin declared in our next meeting. He omitted the joint account with Chloe that received the small, regular transfers. It was closed last month, but it existed during the entire period in question. He also forgot about a small brokerage account in his name only, funded with bonuses from your company. It's drained now, but it was another conduit. So what now? I asked. Now, Martin said, his eyes hard. We spring the trap. We call for a deposition. We put Mark under oath, in a room with a court reporter, and we walk him through this affidavit, line by line. And when he's locked into his lies, we present the bank records. We destroy his credibility in front of his own lawyer. Then, we not only pull our settlement offer off the table, we go back to the judge and ask for sanctions, for him to cover all your legal fees due to his bad faith conduct. We also file a motion for a default judgment in the civil case, arguing his perjury proves he has no defense. The plan was brutal, elegant, and exactly what I wanted. Mark's deposition was scheduled. He arrived with Robert Hill, who looked more resigned than combative. The court reporter swore Mark in. Martin began with soft, easy questions, lulling him into a false sense of security. Yes, he was currently unemployed. Yes, he had debt. No, he had no significant assets. Then Martin changed tack. He slid a document across the table. I'm showing you Exhibit 17, a statement for account number ending in 2287 at First Jersey Bank, held jointly by you and Chloe Carter. Do you recognize this? Mark's face went sheet white. He looked at Hill, who was now staring intently at his own copy of the document. I don't recall. Mark stammered. You don't recall an account you held for over 4 years? Martin asked mildly. The one that received monthly transfers of $1.200 from your personal checking account? The account you failed to list on your financial affidavit, which you swore under oath was complete and accurate. That was just for family stuff. Mark said weakly. It wasn't a real asset. Moving on, Martin said, as if bored, pulling out another sheet. Exhibit 23, a brokerage account with E-Trade, in your name, funded by bonuses from AC Consulting, also omitted. Would you like to explain that? Sweat beaded on Mark's forehead. The room was silent except for the soft tap of the court reporter's keys. Robert Hill put his head in his hands. No further questions, Martin said after a long, painful silence. He looked at Hill. Unless you'd like to redirect? Hill just shook his head, his face grim. The deposition was over. As Mark stood to leave, a broken man, I finally spoke directly to him, my voice cutting through the heavy air. You had a chance for a clean break, Mark. All you had to do was tell the truth. Just once. He didn't look at me. He just shuffled out of the room, his lawyer trailing behind him, already calculating the damage. Martin turned to me, snapping his briefcase shut. The settlement trap is sprung. He's not getting a dime. Now, we move in for the kill. The legal chess game was over. Checkmate was inevitable. The fallout from Mark's perjured deposition was swift and terminal. Martin Sterling filed a scathing motion for sanctions and a default judgment. The judge, after reviewing the evidence of the omitted accounts alongside the emails planning the Oslo deception, was unequivocal. Mark Carter had not only defrauded his wife, but had then compounded his malfeasance by lying to the court. His credibility was annihilated. The final hearing was not a trial. It was a sentencing, in a wood-paneled courtroom that smelled of lemon polish and old books. Mark stood beside a dispirited Robert Hill. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Martin, my posture straight, my expression unreadable. My mother occupied the first row of the gallery, a silent sentinel. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, peered over her glasses. Mr. Carter, you have, through your own actions, forfeited any right to equitable consideration in this divorce. The evidence of financial misconduct is overwhelming and uncontested due to your default. She began to read the order. Each clause was a hammer strike. The petition for divorce is granted on the grounds of irreconcilable differences, with the court noting the respondent's constructive abandonment and financial cruelty as contributing factors. The respondent, Mark Carter, shall have no claim to spousal support, now or in the future. The marital residence, solely titled to the petitioner, is confirmed as her separate property. The petitioner is awarded 100% of her business entity. AC Consulting, the respondent's claims, if any, are extinguished. She then turned to the civil judgment on the claims of fraud and conversion. Judgment is entered in favor of the petitioner, Andrea Carter. The respondent, Mark Carter, is hereby ordered to repay the principal sum of $85.600 plus pre-judgment interest. Furthermore, she continued, her voice hardening, given the egregious, premeditated nature of the fraud and the subsequent attempt to subvert these proceedings through false testimony. The court awards punitive damages in the amount of $200.000. Mark made a choke sound. He'll put a hand on his arm. Finally, the judge said, as a sanction for the bad faith conduct in discovery, the respondent, Mark Carter, is ordered to pay the petitioner's reasonable attorney's fees and costs, which this court determines to be $125.000. All sums are immediately enforceable. She looked directly at Mark. Mr. Carter, you have engaged in a course of conduct that is both morally bankrupt and legally indefensible. You are fortunate that criminal charges are not being pursued at this time, a decision that rests solely with your former spouse. This court's judgment stands as a full and final reckoning. You are dismissed. It was over. With a few strokes of a gavel, Mark was left with a personal debt exceeding $400,000. No assets, no home, and a reputation in tatters. As he stumbled out of the courtroom, avoiding my gaze entirely, I felt no triumph, only a vast, quiet emptiness. The monster had been slain, but the